Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and start. This topic is, as Rebecca said, really pertinent today and really very popular is the only word I can come up with. Everybody's talking about brain degeneration, brain inflammation, and the diseases that result, such as Alzheimer's and Parkinson's, and there's all sorts of books out on it. And we actually know a lot about what's going on in the brain with these disorders now. And basically what's happening is we have brain inflammation, and that's a big word that I know you've heard a lot. And as you know, a lot of people in the medical profession now say that inflammation is the root cause of most of the degenerative diseases that are out there, which is really most of the diseases that are affecting people and killing people today. So inflammation is a huge deal with brain degenerative disorders. So what happens is we have something happens to the neurons of the brain so that they cannot communicate with one another. And we have a deterioration of the function of the brain, and our brain is not able to send its signals. So it can be in various parts of the brain, and that's how these different disorders result. So it can be memory, it can be with cognition, it can be with function, it can be all of the above. It can be very specific areas having to do with speech. So it can be lots of different manifestations can happen through just different areas of the brain deteriorating. This is just some statistics that I pulled off of the Alzheimer's Association website, that Alzheimer's disease is now the 6th leading cause of death in the U.S., with more than 5 million Americans estimated living with it, and that it's growing by leaps and bounds. Is the most frightening part is how quickly it is growing. So it's a really serious disorder, and what I'm seeing is just a lot of fear out there, and people feeling like if it runs in their family and they have a genetic disposition, they're concerned about it. And what I want to tell you about that is that genetics play a minor role. Yes, genetics are important, and yes, there can be genetic factors in disease, but it's really about what we do in our life that determines whether or not we actually manifest that disease. So what triggers brain inflammation? Well, it can be a lot of different things. It can be some sort of trauma, can set up a circumstance where we have inflammation. And what we're talking about here is chronic inflammation. So inflammation, as maybe you've heard before, or maybe you've heard me say, inflammation is a natural body process, and it's a response to injury, and it's part of the healing process. So the problem is when we have chronic inflammation, which just means that it's ongoing and it doesn't stop in the normal way that it should stop. So it can be a trauma, it can be just a poor circulation for a number of reasons. It can be a problem with the blood, that we don't have enough iron, and so we don't have oxygen getting to the cells. It can be a leaky gut. It can be gluten sensitivity. It can be a breakdown of the blood-brain barrier, which is very similar to the gut barrier. And so leaky blood-brain barrier is very similar to leaky gut. It can be diabetes or any type of blood sugar issue. It can be different chemicals that cause inflammation in the body, and lots of other problems. So what are the symptoms of this neuroinflammation or brain inflammation? That's what we call brain inflammation, neuroinflammation. This means it's affecting the nerves. So the symptoms are varied, but it's pretty clear that people who describe something like brain fog or not being able to think clearly, feeling just fatigued, feeling like they are mentally fatigued, feeling like they're not processing things as quickly as they used to, processing thoughts and processing things that they want to say and processing just mental concepts. It can be just a loss of any type of function in the body after a trauma. So if you have a trauma to the brain, you can lose function in other parts of the body, since our brain controls all the rest of our body. And it can be just problems after eating. You may notice not being able to focus well after eating. It can be just mental fatigue when you're exposed to something. So people with chemical sensitivities or sensitivities to certain smells, things like that, and that cause them mental fatigue, that can be signs of neuroinflammation.
And then, not to interrupt you, Dr. Thompson, but just so you guys know, you're not losing your minds. You're seeing the name Rebecca Conrad up there, but this is Dr. Christine Thompson who is leading this webinar. Our apologies for that. For those that are about to join us.
Yes, this is Dr. Thompson talking to you. I know some of you know me and some of you may not. And let me go back. I know Rebecca introduced me, but I just wanted to tell you that I have been practicing as a chiropractor for 22 years, but I've also been practicing nutrition for all of that time. And I've been taking postgraduate coursework in functional medicine all of those years also. So it's really a passion of mine, and it's something that I have found more and more each year is necessary to address. And so that's why I'm doing these webinars now, in order to try to get to more of you, people who aren't able to maybe to get to some of the classes I've done in my office, and present some of this material to let you know that there are things that you can do and there's help out there for you. So let's talk a little bit about the blood-brain barrier. So the blood-brain barrier, similar to the gut barrier, is a membrane that is designed to keep toxins out of the brain, but allow nutrients and glucose, the fuel of the brain, to get to the brain cells. And this barrier can be damaged by certain things. And actually, there's quite a number of things that can damage this barrier. And you can have what I'm calling a leaky blood-brain barrier, just like you can have a leaky gut. So how do you know if you have a leaky blood-brain barrier, or whether it's healthy or not? Well, there actually are blood tests that we can do to determine that. But I'll tell you a really simple thing that you can do yourself is just go to the health food store or drugstore and pick up some GABA, which is a neurotransmitter. And the GABA molecule is not able to cross the blood-brain barrier when it's healthy. And so if you get some GABA at the health food store and you take this neurotransmitter and then you feel better, you know that you have a leaky blood-brain barrier, because it should not have been able to cross into your brain and make you feel better. So it can, when GABA is operating properly in the brain, it can reduce anxiety, reduce blood pressure, reduce blood sugar, suppress your appetite, reduce depression, and reduce PMS symptoms. So if you notice any of those things after taking GABA, there you go, an easy test for you to do. You know you have a leaky blood-brain barrier. And the blood-brain barrier can be healed up just as the leaky gut can be healed up. And it's a process to do that, but it's giving your body the nutrients that it needs to heal and taking away the things that are causing damage to that barrier membrane. So let's talk a little bit more about the lifestyle causes of inflammation to the brain. There's maybe some things that we can't do too much about that can be causing inflammation in our brain, but there are a lot of things that we can do something about. And the things that can cause inflammation are chemicals in our food, and then certain types of food, because of the way they're grown and because of the way they're processed, can cause inflammation in the brain. And then there may be chemicals that we're using in our homes or as personal care products that can be causing inflammation. Stress, actually, too much stress and too much cortisol production can cause inflammation in the brain. And injury, of course. So some injury may be preventable and some not, but just be aware that injury can be a major cause of inflammation in the brain and can set up some chronic inflammation, unfortunately, in a lot of cases today. So I want you to do something for me. I can't see you all to know that you're following instructions and cooperating, but I just want you to do this. I want you to look at this picture and take one hand and just scratch the back of your other hand. And so I want you to imagine if you did that for a few minutes, your hand might feel a little irritated, right? So imagine if you did that for an hour. How irritated would your hand be? Now imagine if you just did that constantly for a week. How irritated would your hand be? How about for a month or a year? You're probably starting to get the picture, I hope. But, a little bit of irritation to the body is manageable, and we can get by with it. But when it's constant irritation over and over and over again, that's what we call inflammation. And these words on top of these scratching fingers are the things in our lifestyle that are causing the inflammation to our brain and to our whole bodies, really. But tonight we're talking about the brain. So we have foods, the foods that we eat. We have toxins that we're exposed to in the environment. We have bugs like viruses and bacteria and things out there that get into our system. We have stress in our life, and we have hormones that are out of balance. And all of these things can cause inflammation when they are constantly aggravating our system. So in other words, our body can handle a lot, right? Our bodies are pretty adaptable and can manage. But when we start overloading our bodies with these things that are constantly scratching at us, over time, we end up with a lot of inflammation and deterioration. So what are the inflammatory foods that I'm talking about? Well, of course, anything processed or refined. And what does that mean? Processed or refined? It just means that it's been altered in some way so that it is not a whole food anymore. Something's been taken out of it. Something has been changed about it. Something has been added to it. It's been changed in some way so that it doesn't resemble a whole food. And what is a whole food? Well, it's a vegetable or a fruit that you can pick outside, or an animal. So if it doesn't look like something that's grown on the earth or runs around on the earth, it's probably processed or refined, and it's probably inflammatory to your body and your brain. And it also includes anything that has been sprayed with pesticides. Pesticides are extremely inflammatory to our bodies and can cause a lot of brain inflammation. And then the 5 main food groups that are inflammatory, for the most part, to a lot of people, are sugar, corn, wheat, soy, and dairy. And just remember those 5: sugar, corn, wheat, soy, and dairy. I don't really have time in this seminar tonight to go into all the specifics of why that is, but just suffice to say that these foods have either been sprayed or they have been hybridized and altered in such a manner over time that the molecules are now vastly different from what we originally ate, and our bodies are processing them differently and sometimes don't recognize them as food proteins. So sometimes they represent some kind of foreign invader protein for some of them, and then for others it has to do with whether or not we have the enzymes to digest them properly and things like that. So sugar, corn, wheat, soy, and dairy. Remember those 5. All right, so just a few statistics on toxic exposure, just to kind of bring it home. There's so many numbers out there in the billions of pounds of toxins that are poured into our earth. It just kind of gets overwhelming, but these numbers are a little bit more manageable and I think maybe meaningful. So we have 80,000 different chemicals that are registered for use in the United States. So what I want you to know about that is that according to our laws, chemicals can be used and are not prohibited unless they are proven to be dangerous. So somebody's actually got to do the research and studies to prove that something is dangerous before it is taken off the market. So of those 80,000 different chemicals registered for use, I believe that a lot of them are dangerous, and it's just that it hasn't been proven sufficiently yet, or we don't have enough data collected. We do know that many of them are what we call hormone disruptors, so that in itself is really a problem. They just have not been removed from the market yet. We also have 80 million pounds of herbicides that are used each year. That's a little ridiculous, and that number is growing, and that is the reason for genetically modified foods, so that they can be sprayed with herbicides and it doesn't kill the crop, but still kills the bugs that they're trying to get rid of. We have 167 industrial chemicals that were found in a study in adults that were not using those chemicals during employment or weren't working in those facilities, but they were found in these adults when they were tested. And they're actually finding DDT in children born today. And DDT has been outlawed and has not been used for quite some years, I think decades now. But they're still finding it in children that are born in recently, very recently. So these things stick around and can be problems for us. Pesticides, I want to just say a few more things about the main pesticide. The most popular one by far of all pesticides used is glyphosate, or Roundup rather. Glyphosate is the active chemical in Roundup. And it was originally designed to chelate minerals, so it will chelate minerals out of your body, in other words, strip you of minerals. It kills our friendly gut bacteria that we need, and it affects how our body gets rid of toxins. So it affects our liver's detoxification abilities, and it causes leaky gut. And so since it causes leaky gut, once you have leaky gut, it's not long until you have leaky brain also, because everything that the gut is leaking into the bloodstream is going to damage the blood-brain barrier, and that's going to end up causing leaky brain also. So I'm not going to bore you too much with research, but there was just a couple of things that I thought were important to mention, that there is research out there showing that chemicals today that we're exposed to are causing neurological damage in children. And there's been this study that I have in front of you by the Harvard School of Public Health showing that children's disorders, brain disorders, neurological disorders such as learning disabilities, cerebral palsy, and mental retardation are related to chemicals. And they in this particular study, they pointed to about 200 chemicals that are in common use today that are causing neurological damage in children. And then this one other study that was reported in the Lancet Neurology, and they actually listed some specific toxins, neurotoxins, that they feel like are heavily involved in autism, ADHD, and dyslexia. And these are all studies done by PhD research people. So they're not just loose connections. These are things that they've studied. So we've always known that, we have known for a long time that lead is a neurotoxin, and we've known that methylmercury is also. There's different forms of mercury, and I'm not going to go into all of that, but methylmercury is the type that's found in fish. And then we have PCBs and arsenic fluoride, which is in our water, and the pesticides that I just mentioned, flame retardants, and BPA, which is found in plastics, as well as the phthalates. So there's a lot of things out there that are being very intimately connected with brain degeneration, inflammation, and neurodegeneration. All right, so how does this work? So we have toxins that cause irritation to the body and start the inflammatory cascade. And this inflammation then causes your body to produce our main anti-inflammatory hormone, which is cortisol. And then cortisol ends up producing a lot of different detrimental effects in our body. So what else is a big producer of cortisol? Well, it's stress. Yes, and I'm sure that none of you out there listening tonight have any stress, but just in case you know someone who has some stress, what happens during the stress response is that we produce adrenaline, noradrenaline, or epinephrine and norepinephrine, and cortisol. And all of these hormones can eventually cause inflammation and deterioration of the body. So cortisol, it has some main actions. It is an anti-inflammatory hormone, but it increases our blood sugar, and it is a catabolic hormone, so it breaks down body tissues. So here's all the different things that can produce extra cortisol in our bodies. We can have sugar imbalance. We can have blood sugar imbalance, in other words, like diabetes or hypoglycemia or insulin resistance. We can have some chronic pain and inflammation going on. We can have sensitivities to food that are irritating our body, and we can have mental stress. And all of these things lead to the production of cortisol. And then excess cortisol causes all of these different symptoms. And I highlighted in red the ones I wanted you to pay attention to tonight. All of them are important, but the ones we're talking about tonight have to do with brain inflammation. So we can get fatigue, we can get depression, anxiety, and irritability. We can have cognitive difficulties, and that's because cortisol is what's called a catabolic hormone, and it breaks down body tissue and causes degeneration of this body tissue. So it's actually causing brain degeneration. All right, so let's talk a little bit more about Alzheimer's disease. Many today who are studying Alzheimer's disease have relabeled it, and they are now calling it type 3 diabetes. And that's because in Alzheimer's disease, we always see insulin resistance, inflammation, and circulatory damage. And so it really is a blood sugar disorder of the brain, and it's causing a very specific damage to the brain that we won't go into, but it's very recognizable when they do brain scans, the damage from Alzheimer's and the deterioration it causes. So what are the complications of diabetes or blood sugar imbalance? Well, we can have all kinds of areas of the body developing degeneration, because diabetes is a disorder of the blood vessels. It's too much sugar in the blood vessels and not being able to store sugar, because insulin is our storage hormone, and all the other hormones in the body just mobilize sugar. So we have all the sugar in the bloodstream causing inflammation to all these different blood vessels, and also to the blood vessels of the brain. And that's what starts to cause the deterioration. Just imagine that same finger scratching, but it's scratching on the blood vessels and the damage over time that can cause. So this is just a listing of those hormones. So the glucagon, growth hormone, epinephrine, and cortisol all mobilize sugar. In other words, it takes stored sugar and mobilizes and puts it into the blood for use. And then the only storage hormone that we have is insulin. And so when we have diabetes, you all know what that is, right? It's not enough insulin, right? We either tax the pancreas so much that it can't produce insulin anymore, or the pancreas, or else it's an autoimmune disorder. So insulin is needed to be able to get that sugar out of the bloodstream and store it. All right, so here's my little example. If you have listened to any of my talks and come to any of my classes, you've seen this, I hope, and I hope you remember it, because it's how I try to illustrate what's going on in our body and why we have this this chronic inflammation, or what I'm calling the inflammatory cycle. So we have things that are causing inflammation in our lifestyle, like toxicity, like stress, like a poor diet. And then this inflammation causes our adrenal glands to produce cortisol to try to deal with that inflammation. Cortisol also produces increased blood sugar. That leads to fat storage when insulin comes in, which eventually leads to insulin resistance, because the cells start to become resistant to insulin when we try to get them to take in sugar too much. And then the insulin resistance eventually leads to diabetes, where we're not able to use the insulin or maybe even produce it at all. And then that diabetes, which is high blood sugar, leads to inflammation, because the sugar causes inflammation or deterioration of the blood vessels. Hope that makes sense to you all. Let me know if it doesn't. I only designed that to be helpful. And I'm really just illustrating what I had you do a few minutes ago with your hands. So we're causing constant irritation to the blood vessels and causing chronic inflammation in the body and in the brain. And it's due to our lifestyle factors, foods, toxins, bugs, stressors, and hormones. All right, so hopefully that made some sense and you have a little more understanding of what's causing brain inflammation. So let's talk a little bit about what we can do about it. So what I am doing in my office is called functional medicine. Maybe you've heard of that, maybe you haven't. But it's basically saying that what we're doing is looking for the underlying cause of symptoms and diseases. So we're trying to find out what is causing them. So if you come to me and say, my head hurts, I'm going to try to figure out what could be causing your head to hurt. If you come in and say, my toe is swollen, I'm going to say, well, let's figure out what's causing your toe to be swollen. And I keep asking that question, what is causing it, until we get to the root cause. Functional medicine is a focus on the whole body, mind, spirit, all parts of the body. We believe that all parts of the body are connected and that everything affects everything. Functional medicine uses natural, safe, and effective methods or therapies to correct the problems that we find. So we're not going to use invasive types of therapies. We're not going to use anything that's dangerous or that hasn't been proven. So we're using very safe and evidence-based methods. Functional medicine is patient-centered. We believe that in our form of healthcare, it is the most powerful to form a partnership with the patient so that we're working together, because quite honestly, you have much more control over your health than I do, because it's your lifestyle that is controlling your health picture for the most part. And so I can help you along. I can give you advice and recommendations. I can give you supplements. I can tell you what to eat, what not to eat. But ultimately, you have to do the work. So we form a partnership and we form a plan that fits with you and your lifestyle. And functional medicine is very focused on empowering you with information, with understanding about how your body works, and with the skills that you need to be able to make the changes in your life that you need to make to achieve the results that you want to achieve. So this picture, I feel like, illustrates better than anything what we're talking about when we say that we have to address the underlying issue. If you look at this house, it's quite obvious there's a problem. But if I were to tell you, well, I'm just going to fix that little roof over the front porch. I'm going to put a new board on there, and I'm going to put some fresh paint on it and fix it up, and it's going to look just right. And then you're going to tell me, well, that's not going to last long, and you're still going to have a problem, because we can all see that there's a foundational issue with this house. And until the foundation is shored up, nothing is going to last with the cosmetic fixes that we put on it. And it's the same for your body. You have to be able to fix the underlying conditions that originally caused the problem and that are foundational systems of your body before you're able to fully heal the issue that you're dealing with and to sustain the changes and the improvements. So we can, you know, we can patch things up and we can put a Band-Aid on things and we can feel better for a little while, but you're not going to feel good for long unless you address the underlying problem, the root cause. How many of you feel like a wilting plant? I know a lot of you will come in here to see me, and that's the way their description suits a wilting plant. I don't think anybody's ever come in and said that, but sometimes they look like a wilting plant, and sometimes they describe themselves that way. So if I were just take out a can of green spray paint and spray all those leaves green again, you would think I was crazy, right? But that's what we do sometimes when we just treat the symptom or just make things look better. We're not really getting to the problem. But we all know what a plant needs, right? What does a plant need to be healthy? It needs soil, right? Good, healthy soil with nutrients in it. It needs sunshine, it needs water, and it needs lots of love, right? It does, we know that. And believe it or not, we need the same things. We need nutrients, we need lots of good nutrition, we need water, we need sunshine, we need lots of love, and we need quite a few other things too. We're a little more complicated than most plants to grow, so there's a lot that we need. But what it boils down to, for your brain to be healthy, it needs to be used. It needs activation, stimulation, use, whatever you want to call it. It needs to be used in the way it's designed to be used. So it needs to be active, and it needs the nutrients and the fuel that it requires. So it needs glucose for fuel, and it needs lots of good nutrients that are derived from whole foods. So what I have put together is something that I call the 6 pillars of health. And I really believe that unless you address the underlying issue and address all of the factors that are involved in being healthy, you're not going to really get to the end of the road that you want to be at, where you've achieved optimal wellness. And I'm hoping that everyone out there wants optimal wellness. Maybe not, but that's always my hope. And I feel like you need a plan in order to get there. It's complicated. It's not easy to do on your own. You can, but it's not easy. But you need a plan, and everything needs to be addressed in some sort of organized, methodical way. And that's what the plan is for. So all of these are important. Nutrition, that your nervous system, your nerves communicate properly, that your body is able to rid itself of the toxins that it produces on its own and the ones that we're exposed to in the environments. We need to be able to deal with stress appropriately and keep stress under control. We need exercise, movement, activity. We need balanced hormones. All of those things are necessary. Can you imagine pulling any one of those out of that diagram and it working? We need all of those things. So they all need to be addressed in some organized fashion. Do they all need to be addressed right now all at the same time? And today? No. We have to address them one thing at a time in a way that is manageable for you in your life. So I'm going to give you a little bit of information now. So and just in case you want to write some things down, this list is from Dr. Josh Axe, one of my favorites to as a resource to go to his website. He's got all kinds of great information there. He's a great doctor. And this is his list of the top 15 anti-inflammatory foods. So great list, and doesn't mean you have to include all 15 in your diet, but if you can include quite a number of these, it's really helpful with inflammation. Isn't it just amazing and wonderful how our environment provides all these natural things that help us to keep down inflammation and be healthy and rebuild and heal ourselves. I just think it's amazing what's available to us out there just growing out of the soil. All right, and how do we reduce our chemical exposure? I have a picture there of some of the very simple, easy things that you can use in your house that are non-toxic, don't have any added chemicals, and are extremely effective. In fact, my very favorite is vinegar. Just a big bottle of white vinegar, and you can clean almost anything in your house. And then I have a little book, I think it's on the next slide. Yep, there it is. The Organically Clean Home is a wonderful little book that has recipes of those very things and how to use them in your home. But honestly, really all you need to do is just buy a bottle of vinegar and dilute it in water, and you can use it as a cleaning substance. And in that previous slide, of course, going organic and green is really, really important. You know, it used to be kind of a funny thing, and people kind of made fun of organic and everything organic, but it really has become so essentially important that you buy organic foods and products as much as possible, because we are being inundated with chemicals, and our bodies, though very adaptable, do have their limits. And also, I believe in regular detox programs to help us, to help our liver to eliminate a lot of those toxins we're exposed to. And then try to reduce the amount of plastics that you use as much as you can. Many of the plastics, as I said earlier, are hormone disruptors, so they cause imbalances in our hormones, and they're also known carcinogens, so they cause genetic mutations in our cells and cause damage to our cells. So you can just eliminate plastics with your food. So don't use plastics to store or cook food in. Don't use plastic bottles to drink out of. Don't use plastic anywhere that it's heated up, because it emits more and more particles the more it's heated. That's kind of the basics of reducing chemical exposure. There's a lot you can do once you start researching it. There's really a lot of things that you do have control over. Some things that we don't, but a lot that we do have control over. And one of my very favorite resources is the Environmental Working Group. EWG.org is their website. And they produce this Dirty Dozen and Clean 15 list every year. And that's the list of produce that is the highest in pesticides is the Dirty Dozen, and the Clean 15 is the produce that is the lowest in pesticides and that are safe to buy non-organic. But the Dirty Dozen, you should always buy organic, because they are known to be very highly dosed with pesticides. Environmental Working Group, EWG.org, all kinds of lists and resources on their website, just amazing. They have lists of safe sunscreens, cosmetics, all sorts of different things. So let's just mention, I don't want to go in detail, but let's just mention electromagnetic frequencies and exposure. It's a hot topic today. And really all I'm going to say, I am very science-based. And unfortunately, there's not enough research or science around electromagnetic frequency exposure. Science is not ruling out that EMFs are a problem and we can be overexposed and they can cause health issues, but they are saying that there's not enough evidence that they cause cancer or a couple other things that they've looked at. So the basics of the electromagnetic spectrum is that we have the visible spectrum, we have ionizing radiation at the higher frequencies, and then we have the non-ionizing radiation at the lower frequencies. And the non-ionizing radiation does not damage genetically, does not damage our cells. The ionizing radiation, such as X-rays, does damage our cells. So, but it doesn't mean that there isn't other ways that EMF exposure can affect you. So I still think you should be careful with carrying your cell phone on your body all the time, or having a Wi-Fi router right next to your head all the time. Things like that are important. All I'm saying is that we don't know the facts yet, which we've heard that before in the past, right? And at some point in the future, we will end up knowing more of those facts, and we'd rather be safe than sorry. All right, so exercise. How important is exercise? It is absolutely essential in dealing with brain deterioration and inflammation, because exercise is a stress reducer. It stimulates our natural pain relievers, and it activates our lymphatic system, which helps eliminate toxins, and it activates brain chemistry. And one of the most fascinating books that I've read is called Spark, and it goes through all of these studies that have been done that show how much exercise activates the brain and makes it more effective, increases cognitive ability, and increases mood and relieves depression. It's just amazing what exercise can do for the brain. Very, very important. So even when you don't feel like it, just get out there and exercise. All right, so how about sleep? How much sleep do we need? Well, probably different for everybody, a little different. The average estimate is somewhere between 7 and 9 hours a day. But the most interesting thing, there's two interesting things about sleep that I want to mention. The first is that there was a recent discovery of a lymphatic system in the brain. And the reason that's so important is that scientists and medicine used to believe that there was no lymphatic drainage of the brain. And the reason that they never discovered it before is because the lymphatic system of the brain is activated by sleep. So during sleep is when your brain starts filtering out chemicals and things that shouldn't be there. So sleep is very important for brain health for a number of reasons. And also, I wanted to let you know that electronic light, the blue light from electronics, definitely interferes with sleep. The blue light, that frequency, is very activating to the brain and tells your brain it's time to wake up. So if you watch TV or on your cell phone or on your computer within an hour of bedtime, you're going to have trouble sleeping at some point. Maybe not when you fall asleep, but maybe sometime during the night it will cause you to wake up. So make sure that you shut off electronics, I would say, to be safe, at least an hour and a half before bedtime.
And Christine, that's an interesting point, because what do? We wake up in the middle of the night and at 2 a.m. start to look at our phone.
Right.
Most social media activity is at 2 a.m. So
yeah.
It doesn't work. So that's a good point. It's good to know.
Yep. Big no. Just take that cell phone and put it out in a different room and use a regular old alarm clock again. And just make it not accessible to you during the night because it's too tempting. All right. The stress response. How do we keep stress manageable? Stress is a huge factor today. It's a huge factor in brain inflammation, brain degeneration. It's a huge factor in all types of degenerative health diseases that are very commonplace today. So all the things that I just mentioned are extremely important in dealing with stress. Exercise, as I said, and then our body uses an excessive amount of nutrients, in particular the B vitamins, during the stress response. So it's important to replenish those vitamins and be taking a good whole food source of vitamins when you're under stress. And then to institute some specific relaxation and stress-reducing techniques like deep breathing, yoga, meditation, prayer, just quiet time. There's a lot of different techniques out there. There is the tapping technique, or emotional freedom technique is another word for it. There's a bunch of other brainwave techniques, neurofeedback, or other lots of different techniques out there that help with stress reduction. And then just plain old laughing. I think it's really important to laugh every single day. So I make sure that I do that. And if I haven't laughed one day, then I make sure that I read something funny or watch something funny by the end of the day. Because laughing actually stimulates endorphins and relieves stress. And it's such an important part of health. You really have to keep your sense of humor and keep everything in perspective.
So, Chris, we have a question. One of them was to just clarify that we're not supposed to use cell phones before bed. Does that count for television as well, or is that different?
Yes, that includes television, it includes computers, it includes anything that emits electronic light in the blue frequency. All of them stimulate your brain. So yeah, just read a book, listen to some music, do some yoga, do something else, pick up a hobby that you can just sit and do before bed, but no TV an hour and a half before bed. Absolutely. Very important. So this slide is a little disconcerting, and I just wanted to stick it in there, just not that we don't all know that our healthcare system is in dire straits, but just to put it in perspective, and these figures are all a little bit old. I don't have the most current figures, but we are spending a lot on healthcare, and by all studies that I have read recently, it does seem that we're getting sicker instead of weller. And in fact, I've heard a number of proclamations that this new generation coming up of children will be the first generation that has a lower life expectancy than their parents. It would be the first one in many centuries, actually, that has a lower life expectation. And that is because of our exposure, our lifestyle, the foods that we're eating, all of the things that we have just talked about. So it's a huge issue, and it's a great passion of mine to educate everyone about this, and that there is something you can do, and that just because your neighbor or your friend or your relative says that it's okay to eat out at McDonald's every now and then, or to be exposed to some of the chemicals that we're exposed to, and not be protecting ourselves, it doesn't mean that it is okay. You really need to educate yourself, listen to the experts, find out what you can do. Don't obsess about it. Don't get all afraid and worry yourself to death, but just be proactive and do the things that you can do. And so that's where I come in. So I have been told that sometimes when I present these classes that it gets a little overwhelming, and there's a lot of facts and a lot of information and a lot of physiology about the body and a lot of confusion about all of it. And I understand that. It is a lot of information, and it's, honestly, it's complicated. And it's taken me a lot of years of study to understand all this. And I'm still studying. I'm still learning every year. I go to postgraduate seminars a few times a year, and I learn new information all the time. So it's very complicated, but that's what I am here to do. I'm here to help you wade through this. I don't want your source of healthcare information to be the internet. And by the way, that's what the number one thing that people tell me that is their source of healthcare information. There's a lot of misinformation out there on the internet. So I really want you to find someone, me or someone else that you trust as a healthcare professional that is informed and knows their stuff and can guide you through this process, because it's not easy, and you do need some help. Is the process of getting well easy? Well, I wouldn't call it easy, but I also wouldn't call it hard. I can can help you with that. I can tell you what to do. The things that I have people do are very manageable. I see people make changes in their life and get better every day. So I know without a doubt that it's manageable and doable, and I know that every one of you can do it. Sometimes you just need someone to hold your hand a little bit and guide you along the way.
We have another question, Christine.
Okay.
So when you say something like detox regularly, in general, what does that mean? Is that varied by person? Is there a general rule how often that is?
It does vary by person, but everyone needs help. You know, if you looked at that slide that I presented on the amount of chemicals we're exposed to, even if you're careful and buy everything organic, you are still exposed to a lot. You need help. So when I say to detox regularly, I mean at least once or twice a year. For some people, it needs to be more like 3 or 4 times a year. And I'm not talking about a colon cleanse or a fast or something like that. Those are fine too. I think colon cleanses are helpful and fasts are very helpful. I'm talking about actually facilitating what we call biotransformation in the liver. So it's actually helping your liver to convert those toxic chemicals in your body to a form that it can wash out of your body. And that's very specific. It's not just eating a certain way or eliminating certain foods. It's very specific products that aid your liver in that biotransformation process. Did that answer the question?
I hope so.
Well, ask it again if that wasn't the answer you're looking for. All right, so the things that I do here in my office, I do provide functional medicine analysis. I do a full functional medicine health analysis. I do just plain old nutritional counseling and lifestyle counseling, help people to change the lifestyle factors that are troubling to them. I also, of course, provide my chiropractic adjustments. I do a very specific technique that's called SOT, or sacro-occipital technique. That's a very gentle technique, and it's a full body technique where I look at all the joints of the body and I analyze to find where the problems are. I also do low-level laser therapy, or cold laser, some people call it. And laser is very effective for inflammation. Not necessarily brain inflammation, but inflammation in joints and muscles and other tissues in the body can be very effective. And then I also provide detoxification programs. I have a few very specific programs that aid in biotransformation in the liver and help your liver to get rid of those toxic chemicals that it hasn't been able to process. I also do full blood lab. I do a functional analysis on the blood lab. In other words, I am not looking to diagnose diseases. We have a whole medical profession that is experts at that and very good at diagnosing diseases. I personally believe that we need to catch things before they have become a disease and need to be diagnosed. And so when I look at blood lab, I'm looking at healthy ranges. I'm not looking at the ranges the lab provides, which are used to diagnose disease. So I hope that makes sense. I also do saliva hormone panels. I do dried urine panels, the Dutch test, if anybody's ever heard of that, which is dried urine hormone panels. I do genetic testing, and the way I use the DNA testing is to design lifestyle factors that are in accordance with your genetic alleles and what genes that you are presenting with. I don't believe that genetics drive our health, but I believe that we can be cognizant of what our genetics are telling us and then have the lifestyle factors that don't turn on the genes that we don't want to turn on. All right.
And Christine, I'm just bringing this up because maybe You can go back a slide if you want. Just you were talking about the labs that you do, and I know you know this can be a long list, and people think, wow, look at all these things she does. But there are real examples where Dr. Thompson has done certain labs that revealed a patient's condition after years of struggling to find a diagnosis with their medical doctor, because you looked at the labs in a different way or a broader range. I'm using the wrong terminology, but.
Well, I also do some very specialized blood tests. So the standard blood lab won't always reveal everything that we want to know. But if I see some markers on blood lab and I think, I think we need to know a little more about this, I can run some specialized tests. And because my therapies are helping the body rebuild itself, there's a lot I can do after I run the specialized tests, where the medical doctors say to me, well, I don't need that test because I'm not going to do anything differently. I'm still going to prescribe this medication. And so they don't understand why we need the specialized test. Well, that's why, because I'm not prescribing the medication. I'm looking at what's been damaged in your body and what do we need to help heal. So it's just a whole different way of looking at the body, at looking at health, and at looking at the testing methods, the diagnostic methods that we have available to us. So yeah, if you've seen your medical doctor and they've told you, oh, well, everything's normal here, well, it's probably not a disease process yet, but it may not be normal either. It may not be healthy. So I'm always happy to look at blood lab and give my impression there. All right, so that was pretty much the information that I wanted to give to you. I'm hoping that you got something out of it and learned something new about your body, about brain inflammation, about brain degeneration, about what you can do to help yourself. And I also wanted to tell you that tonight I'm going to offer a special discount off of my introductory consult. My normal fee for this service is $75, and I'm offering it tonight for $45. Not that you have to make the appointment tonight, but if you want to do that, just call my office and just tell Tina, the office manager, that you would like the introductory consult at the special webinar price. And what this consult involves is sitting down with me and discussing what is going on with you, what your health concerns are, and what your next best step would be. So during this consult, I'm not going to go over blood lab, and I'm not going to do comprehensive functional analysis, but I will talk to you about your concerns and about whether I'm familiar with what's going on with you and about whether I have any suggestions about what your next step should be. Other things that you can do is you can go to my website. You can take my free health assessment. There's a little button on the website, and you just press that button, and it leads you to a functional medicine health assessment that you can take, and then I can discuss that with you if you would like. And you can also go to my website and find out about our monthly supplement specials. Well, that's not on the web. Is that on the website? It may or may not be, but it is in our monthly newsletter. So if you sign up for our monthly newsletter, we tell you each month about the supplements that are on sale, that are discounted.
Yeah, all of the month specials are now on the website. That's in
your okay. They are. They are courtesy of Rebecca. And then I also wanted to just tell you that I plan to do more of these webinars. I am hopeful that this is a better avenue to reach more of you. I love doing classes in my office because I can see all of you and I can ask you questions and get feedback, which I can't do on this webinar, but I feel like it's much easier for you to be sitting in your home and listening to me and hopefully asking the questions that you need to ask. So I hope to do more of these. I think we have one scheduled either in August or September. I don't think we've set a date yet for that. So if you have ideas on topics that you would like discussed, please feel free to let me know that. And I think Rebecca just put a question. Did you put that question?
Yeah, I just launched the question about what topics would you like to hear about in the future?
Yeah.
You can answer, you can provide more than one answer.
So, yeah, so let us know what topics you would like me to talk about, or you want more information on. And let's see. Oh, and please follow us on Facebook and Instagram, because we have lots of great posts on there, on both of those sites. Lots of good health tips and different posts there. And I think that's about it. Did you have anything else, Rebecca?
No, that's it.
Okay. So, we did pretty good.
Let me just check that we had a comment here, but it looks like a very, okay. So a thank you comment from someone. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
You enjoyed the webinar.
Oh, good. So any questions? I went through that at record speed. I thought it was going to take me a lot longer, and so I have time if anybody has any questions. No questions? Do you see anything?
No, not yet. Sometimes it takes people a couple minutes to,
we'll wait
or a couple seconds to think about whether or not they want to ask that big question.
Anything that you thought needed clarifying, Rebecca, before we finish up?
No, I don't think so. Yeah, I think it was good to just ask the questions as we went along.
Okay.
Another thank you.
Okay.
Don't feel pressure to send those messages. We really appreciate them. All right. Another thing we were thinking about doing is Facebook Live. When Dr. Thompson can, refreshing her memory about this one too, but some Facebook Live sessions where we can have questions prepared on hot topics to discuss, or you guys can send some questions in advance about any healthcare topic that you're interested in, and Dr. Thompson can address those questions from a functional medicine approach. So that's something else that we're looking to do.
Yep, very good.
One more. I think we got some questions. Let's see. So one of them is, you spoke about the importance of a liver cleanse. How can that be done safely?
So I have programs that I do here in the office. I'm very particular about liver cleanse. So in order to it's actually called biotransformation in the liver. In order to assist that biotransformation, you have to have a healthy gut lining. So if you have leaky gut, I don't recommend a liver cleanse. I recommend healing up that gut lining first. And so I really prefer that people work with me when we do a liver cleanse. I rarely will recommend one for somebody unless I've worked with them and made sure that they have a healthy gut first, and they're ready to be able to help the liver and make sure that their liver is in a state where it can do that. So that maybe didn't answer your question exactly, but to do it safely, I personally feel like you need to be under the care of a healthcare professional. That's one of the areas that they have expertise in, and that's something that I've been doing for about 15 or maybe even 20 years, working with liver cleanses.
Oh, one question that had come up earlier was about GABA, and how would somebody get GABA?
You can just go to any health food store, drug store, and look for GABA. It's actually a pretty common supplement that's out there, and I'm not going to say that they're real high quality out there, but GABA should not be, when you take it as a supplement form, it should not be able to help you. If it does help you, you've got a leaky blood-brain barrier. So that's all I'm going to say about that. I'm not a fan of the companies that sell it because it's not something you should be taking in a supplement form. But you can find it out there, and if you take it and you feel better, you know you have a leaky blood-brain barrier.
Catch-22 there.
I know, right? Any other questions?
I think that was it. I don't think I missed anything. All right. I think that's it. If there's no other questions, we can probably close for the night. And let's see, what time is it? Uh-oh, if you're going to bed at 9 o'clock, make sure you turn off the computer and the television.
Yep, we're getting ready to turn ours off. All right, thanks, everybody. Thanks so much for attending. I really appreciate your attention. And feel free to email me if you have other questions that you think of later on. And feel free to take advantage of that $45 consult by calling the office or just emailing me about that.
All right. Bye-bye. Good night, everybody.
Good night.